while since the slimline card making trend took off, and I still think it's one of the best ways to showcase long-stemmed florals, which is exactly what I'm going to do in today's stylish card making techniques with Jenny, featuring the Builder Flower Narcissus. Hi guys, it's Jenny. Welcome back to another video. As I said, in today's, I'm going to be featuring the Build a Flower Narcissus, and I'm going to be pairing it with some of the products that Altenew carries for slimline card making. The Narcissus set is particularly good for using with slimline cards because it has these long stems and long leaves which just work really well with this look. And I'm showing you here the nesting slim rectangles. These are a set of rectangles that you can use for slimline, mini slimline cards, and there are a few other slimline type products that Altenew carries, a couple of which I'll be using in today's video. But to start off with, I'm going to do my stamping. I have several pieces of A2 size Nina Solar White cardstock, and I'm going to be using my mini Misty, and you'll see here I'm laying up the outline of the main floral and one of the leaves, or the leaf, over towards the right hand side of my cardstock. So this is just an A2 size panel of cardstock, 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches. I'm going to ink it up with Obsidian pigment ink for my outline. And the reason I've got that so far over to the right hand side is I can just flip it round, and that way I can get two stampings of that petal, of that floral and of that leaf on the same panel without having to adjust where my stamps are. And I can do this throughout my stamping. I'm going to be creating 4 florals and 4 leaves. I actually only end up using 3 on my card, so I get 1 left over. But this way of doing it makes it super quick, basically halves your time in terms of doing all your layering stamping, and you can switch out your panels in between stamping, and that way it has a little bit of time for the ink to dry and soak into the cardstock before you come in with your next layer, which I think helps for each of those layers stand out against the previous one if you let them dry sort of maybe a minute in between each stamping. So my main background color, the palest color, I'm starting off with Buttercream. I'm then going to stamp that down, flip around the cardstock and stamp it again. As you can see, it's really quick and easy to do this. And then for my second layer, I'm using Warm Sunshine. And I recommend when you're lining up these stamps, using that sort of trumpet outline edge. You'll see that that edge appears in almost all of the layers of the petals, and it just makes it super easy to line up. And I'm just going to stamp that down. As you know, I'm going to do another panel off camera, and that way these all have had about 30 seconds to a minute to dry in between. Helpfully on the Builder Flower sets as well, or at least some of the newer ones, each of the stamps are labeled so you know which order to stamp them in. So this is A3 that I'm coming in with here, and I'm stamping this with Honey Drizzle, which is a sort of darker, more brownish color of yellow, and you can see how much depth that adds just by stamping it over that Warm Sunshine. I can just flip around my cardstock and stamp it down again. I am actually in a couple of instances stamping each image twice just to get a full coverage of ink. Not always, but in most of the time I'll do 2 stamps each time. For the trumpet, I guess, the bit in the middle, I don't know what the technical term is. I'm sure someone's going to tell me in the comments. Leave me a comment, let me know. I'm going to use Sunkissed, which is this sort of pale peachy orange color. And then for my second layer in the center, which is A6, I'm going to come in with some orange cream. And these are really easy to line up as well. You can just look for that sort of crinkly outline, and it just makes it super easy to line up, as well as look for the little engraved stamen, and that way you can be sure that you've got your stamp angled correctly. And then for the final layer, A7, I'm coming in with some Autumn Blaze, which is a really nice, bright, rich, sort of deep orange color. And I'm actually using the colors suggested on the inside of the packaging. I don't often do that, but the colors suggested were just so good and I really like how it turned out. So I highly recommend when you get new stamp sets, taking a look at the color suggestions made by Altenew themselves, because there's some really fun ones in there if you're a little bit color challenged like I can be sometimes, sort of looking for inspiration. And of course the ink sets always come with that sort of gradiated shading and make it super easy. For my leaves, I am using, for the main solid lightest layer, this is Sweet Leaf. And I'm going to stamp that down a couple of times. And I'm also going to stamp the first layer of the stamen at the same time. So there's actually a 2-layered stamen that you can stamp in the center, and I'm going to use the Sweet Leaf for that as well. Just flip around my card as I have before, and it just makes it super easy. When I've stamped this set in the past as well, rather than sort of fiddling around with the tiny little stamp for the center, I have also colored it in with a gold gel pen. So you can do whatever you like. For my second green layer, I'm using just green, and I'm going to stamp that a couple of times again to get a solid outline. And I'll also use that final stamen layer, just line that up and also stamp that down in just green as well. And this adds a really subtle shadow just up part of that stamen, almost as if the trumpet of the Narcissus flower is sort of shading that stamen. So it's worth doing. It does add a little bit more depth and sort of 3D sort of vibe to your flower. For my final leaf layer, I'm using Hunter Green. All of these greens come in the same set as well, paired along with, I think it's Minty Mint. So they all come along in the same set if you wanted to just grab all of them together. They're a really nice, bright, rich pop of green that pairs beautifully with the yellows I've used. I'm then going to die cut out the flowers and the leaves using the coordinating dies. I'm going to use my satin masking tape to secure those in place before I run them through my die cutting machine. You'll see there's also a die for the stems, and I haven't stamped those yet. And the reason for that is I like to die cut out my stems first from the cardstock before I then stamp them down. So the acrylic can, for long thin stamps like this, get quite wiggly and wavy, and I just want to make sure that I've got it in broadly the right place, so it's easy enough to just pop that die cut back in place and then line up my stamp. So that's exactly what I've done there. Now I'm going to use gold mirror cardstock from Altenew to die cut the largest of the Slim Deco cover dies, and this creates a gorgeous, very detailed border. You might have to run it through your die cutting machine a couple of times or use a metal plate just to be sure to get that die cut come out perfectly. And I left a few pieces in the corners. You might be able to see that. That just helps with gluing it down because it's so delicate. Now I've got the exact same size nesting slim rectangle here that matches perfectly with that Slim Deco cover die, and I'm die cutting that out from Warm Sunshine cardstock. I've then grabbed this Slimline embossing folder. This is the classic Pinecones. It creates a 3D embossed look like all of Altenew's embossing folders, but it's slimline, so it works great with this size of card, and it gives a great embossed look that I can then adhere my Slim Deco border over the top, get that nice textured background with liquid glue, and then just put it under a block so that it dries in place. To create my note card, I'm going to create a 1/2 inch border all around that background, which is 2 3/4 inches by 6 3/4 inches. So I'm going to create my card base measuring 7 1/4 inch long, and then 3 1/4 inches wide multiplied by 2. So that would be 6 1/2 inches overall. I can then adhere down my panel with some instant dimension foam tape from Altenew. That helps get rid of any warping potentially that you might also have, and it creates this gorgeous border around the outside. Now, explaining my floral arranging card process would imply I have a plan. So I'm going to speed this up and show you sort of without any cuts just exactly what I do to create my layout. So I've got all my die cuts off to one side. I'd say if there were some rules of thumb I tried to stick by, I like to overlap the border so you can see that the petals and some of the leaves are overlapping that background. And then I like to concentrate towards the bottom 2/3 of the slimline card and have my main image create some sort of triangular focal look. So each of those flowers is looking off a different way, makes them look like a different stamp, even though they're all the exact same stamp. And then I'm going to arrange my stems and some of the longer leaves off the bottom and trim those, but leave those other petals hanging off the outside. For my sentiment, I'm going to pull out one of the sentiments from the Builder Flower Narcissus and stamp it down with some obsidian pigment ink. All of these go with the word U, and I wanted to die cut that out. So I have these bold greetings. This has a U in it that was the right size. I die cut it out from that same gold mirror cardstock and adhered it down onto the top of my sub-sentiment strip and then popped it up on a double layer of foam squares, and that basically finishes my card. I didn't add any more embellishments. I think the gold mirror gives it enough bling, and I love how this turned out. I hope you enjoyed it as well, and it gave you some inspiration for creating slimline and mini slimline cards with Altenew's Slimline supplies. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give us a thumbs up, drop us a comment. What do you want to see next? Or what other sizes of cards would you like to see me create with? Anything you can think of, leave in the comments below. All the supplies are also listed there, and have a wonderful day. Bye.
Hello crafters, Jen here. For more tips, techniques, tutorials, and to discover which paper crafting products are right for you, subscribe to Altenew's YouTube channel. Make sure to hit the notification bell so you don't miss any videos. Thanks for watching.